Cousin Arnold, you're about to become my big brother Arthur.
What you talking about, Willis?
Bright lights on, set endless laughter from audiences. Diff'rent Strokes was once hailed as the perfect symbol of a happy multiracial family. But when the series ended, the lives behind its child stars shocked the world. The beloved faces once adored by all of America slowly faded into darkness. Fortunes vanished, health deteriorated, and futures collapsed. Why did such a legendary sitcom leave behind such tragic outcomes? Stay with us until the end of the video to uncover the truth behind the Diff'rent Strokes curse, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss this exclusive investigative series. The blazing success and the curse behind Diff'rent Strokes. When it first aired on November 3, 1978 on NBC, Diff'rent Strokes quickly became one of the most successful sitcoms on American television. Its simple yet deeply human story, a wealthy white real estate mogul adopting two orphaned black boys from Harlem, immediately touched the hearts of viewers. In a late 1970s America still grappling with racial division and inequality, a family sitcom daring to unite two races under one roof was a bold step. Yet instead of feeling forced or heavy-handed, the show used humor and wit to explore cultural differences, making its message of love and unity both light and deeply resonant. Over the course of 8 seasons and 189 episodes, Diff'rent Strokes maintained steady viewership and carved out unforgettable moments in American pop culture. Episodes didn't just aim for laughs, they tackled real issues. One episode warned against child predators, another addressed teenage eating disorders, while others confronted drug abuse, kidnapping, and car accidents. These storylines made Diff'rent Strokes one of the first sitcoms to go beyond mere entertainment, turning the living room into a social classroom. What truly made the show memorable was its talented cast of young actors. Gary Coleman, who stood just 4'8" due to a congenital kidney disease, played Arnold Jackson, the tiny but sharp-witted boy. With his catchphrase, "What you talkin' 'bout Willis?" Arnold became a cultural phenomenon quoted endlessly on TV, in ads, and on comedy stages. TV Guide would later rank it among the most iconic lines in television history. It's no exaggeration to say that Arnold and Gary Coleman became the face of an entire generation of child viewers. Alongside Gary were Dana Plato as sweet blonde Kimberly Drummond and Todd Bridges as the quick-witted older brother Willis, together forming a trio of teenage characters adored by audiences. They not only brought depth to the narrative, but also became youthful icons of American TV at the time. Conrad Bain, with his calm demeanor, portrayed the kind-hearted father Philip Drummond, a stabilizing force balancing the kids' antics with profound life lessons. Charlotte Rae also deserves mention for her role as housekeeper Edna Garrett. Though she appeared only in the first season and half of the second, her character was so beloved that she spun off into her own series, The Facts of Life, which lasted nearly a decade and became a hit in its own right. That a secondary character from Diff'rent Strokes could anchor her own sitcom spoke volumes about the original show's charm. From a commercial perspective, Diff'rent Strokes was a resounding success. At the peak of his fame, Gary Coleman earned as much as $70,000 per episode, well above the average television actor's salary in the 1980s. The show was syndicated, extensively released on VHS and DVD, and served as inspiration for countless other programs. At its height, an estimated tens of millions of Americans tuned in for each episode, making it one of NBC's biggest entertainment pillars at the time. But behind the glowing lights and roaring laughter that Diff'rent Strokes brought to homes, another truth quietly took shape. The show ended to thunderous applause, but the lives of its child stars took a turn into a much darker and harsher chapter. From the height of success, they began a painful descent, where early fame became a burden, and celebrity turned into shackles. Once the curtain fell, it became clear the Diff'rent Strokes curse wasn't just a myth, but a chain of very real tragedies that swept away the children once loved by an entire nation. The first tragedy struck Gary Coleman, the actor who played Arnold Jackson in Diff'rent Strokes. Gary Coleman as Arnold Jackson, the tragic fall of a child star. Gary Coleman, the name forever tied to the clever, cheeky Arnold Jackson in Diff'rent Strokes, was once embraced as America's child. But behind that radiant smile was a life marked by heartbreaking tragedy, leading many to call his story the clearest proof of the so-called Diff'rent Strokes curse. Born in 1968, Gary suffered from a congenital kidney condition from birth, requiring regular dialysis and undergoing his first transplant at just 5 years old. The medication stunted his physical growth, and his adult height never exceeded 4'8", about 142 meters. In a world obsessed with appearances, This could have been a career-ending barrier, but Gary turned it into a defining trait. His round face and mischievous eyes caught the attention of producers, and he was cast as Arnold, a street-smart orphan wise beyond his years in Diff'rent Strokes. Within just a few episodes, Gary Coleman became a nationwide phenomenon. His catchphrase, "What you talkin' 'bout Willis," echoed across America in bars, schoolyards, even stand-up routines. Viewers adored Arnold not only for his cuteness, but for his optimism and charm. At the height of his fame, Gary earned up to $70,000 per episode, a record-setting salary for a TV actor in the early 80s. By the end of his teen years, he had earned an estimated $18 million, turning a working-class kid into a millionaire. But that spotlight came with a shadow. Gary's adoptive parents and manager controlled his earnings through a trust fund. When he turned 18 and was legally allowed to access his finances, only $220,000 remained. The fortune he had made over years of work was gone, leaving Gary stunned and embittered. He sued his parents, and manager won the case and was awarded $1.3 million, but most of it vanished again due to legal fees and ongoing medical expenses. From child star to millionaire to penniless, Gary had lost everything. With his acting career fading, Gary struggled to make ends meet. He once worked as a mall security guard to survive. The stress of life and his ongoing health problems led to frequent emotional breakdowns. In 1998, he was arrested for punching a fan who asked for an autograph. The image of the lovable Arnold vanished, replaced by one of an angry, bitter man disillusioned with life. He once admitted he hated the childhood that had been stolen by work, hated the fame that never brought happiness. Gary's personal life was no better. In 2007, he married Shannon Price, but their turbulent marriage ended in divorce, just a year later marred by accusations and public scandal. In his final years, Gary lived in near isolation away from the spotlight that once defined him. On May 26, 2010, Gary suffered a severe head injury after a fall at his home in Utah. 2 days later, he passed away at the age of 42. His sudden death shocked the nation. People mourned the boy who once brought joy to millions of families, and grieved the fate of a man whose life had become a symbol of lost innocence. Gary Coleman died penniless, leaving no estate, becoming a tragic emblem of the dark side of Hollywood fame, where children are swept into a whirlpool of money and power with no one to protect them. Gary Coleman, the child star who rose and fell, was the painful opening chapter of the Diff'rent Strokes curse, and his story was only the beginning of a long series of tragedies that would also befall his castmates. Dana Plato as Kimberly Drummond, the tragedy of a princess. Next, in the string of tragedies came Dana Plato, the blonde princess of Diff'rent Strokes, once the dream girl of millions of American teenagers in the late 1970s. At age 14, she appeared on screen as Kimberly Drummond, the sweet and graceful daughter of Philip Drummond. Dana embodied elegance, charm, and youthful energy. Audiences adored Kimberly as the ideal big sister figure, gentle, caring, and sometimes innocently naive. While Gary Coleman as Arnold brought the laughs and Todd Bridges as Willis delivered wit, Dana was the feminine balance that completed the show's dynamic. But it was during those teenage years, under the brightest spotlight, that Dana began to lose her way. Behind her innocent face were nights of partying and substance abuse. She later admitted to drinking alcohol, smoking marijuana, and trying cocaine, all by the age of 15, when most girls her age were still in high school. What began as impulsive choices quickly evolved into destructive habits, and her future took a dark turn. At 18, Dana became pregnant. In the television industry of that era, a pregnant teenage actress was deemed unacceptable. Producers had no choice but to write Kimberly out of the show. Being pushed out of Diff'rent Strokes, the very show that defined her career, left Dana without a foundation in Hollywood. Once a beloved child star, she became a struggling actress, taking low-budget roles and posing for Playboy in a desperate attempt to stay afloat. Without steady income, Dana descended into financial hardship. At one point, she worked at a laundromat in Las Vegas for just $575 an hour, a cruel contrast to her glamorous past. But money troubles weren't her only burden. Dana grew increasingly dependent on painkillers and tranquilizers to numb her emotional void. In 1991, in a moment of despair, she shocked the public by robbing a video store at gunpoint. The story made national headlines, turning Dana into a poster child for the downfall of a former Hollywood child star. Though singer Wayne Newton later posted bail for her out of sympathy, Dana couldn't escape her downward spiral. Just a year later, she was arrested again for forging a prescription for Valium. The American media at the time treated Dana as the quintessential example of the Diff'rent Strokes curse, a once-beloved teen idol who had fallen into a cycle of crime in courtrooms. Photographs of Dana in handcuffs on the front pages stood in heartbreaking contrast to her earlier image as the gentle Kimberly Drummond on television. Her tragedy reached its peak in May 1999. On May 7th, Dana appeared on Howard Stern's radio show confidently declaring that she was clean sober and trying to rebuild her life. But just one day later, the worst happened. Dana was found dead in her motorhome in Oklahoma, the result of a drug overdose, Valium and Lortab. She died at the age of 34, leaving behind a 14-year-old son and millions of heartbroken fans. Police ruled it a suicide. Dana Plato's death sent shockwaves through the nation, much like the passings of Marilyn Monroe or Judy Garland before her. It underscored a painful truth: Hollywood can turn an ordinary girl into a cultural icon and then crush her in the relentless gears of fame. On the day of her funeral, people didn't just mourn a short life, they mourned a symbol that was never protected. In the history of American television, Dana Plato's Kimberly Drummond will forever be remembered as the sweet girl next door. But in real life, Dana was a bitter testament to the price of early fame. Her story made it painfully clear that the Diff'rent Strokes curse was not just a myth, it was a living nightmare that stole the youth and future of a true Hollywood princess. Todd Bridges as Willis Jackson, overcoming the darkness. If Gary Coleman and Dana Plato were painful examples of how quickly childhood fame can be swallowed by darkness, then the story of Todd Bridges offers a different path. He didn't escape the Diff'rent Strokes curse, he too battled addiction and had run-ins with the law, but what set him apart was his decision to fight back. While the smiles of Arnold and Kimberly faded forever, Willis, the wisecracking older brother on screen, chose to confront the shadows of his own life. And from that lowest point, Todd Bridges wrote a rare chapter in the tragedy of the Diff'rent Strokes, cast a story of redemption, not ruin. Todd Bridges, who portrayed Willis Jackson, the charismatic older brother to Arnold, delighted millions of American viewers with his natural and playful performances. By the time Diff'rent Strokes premiered, Todd was already a seasoned child actor, having appeared in Little House on the Prairie Roots and other TV shows. His presence brought more than just entertainment, he embodied the relatable, spirited teen that audiences followed for nearly a decade. When Diff'rent Strokes ended in 1986, Todd had just entered adulthood, and it marked the start of his downward spiral. He fell into crack cocaine, methamphetamine, becoming heavily addicted. The drugs led to crime, drug dealing, gang fights, assaults. In 1989, Todd was charged with attempted murder after allegedly shooting a drug dealer. He spent 9 months in jail awaiting trial, but was acquitted due to lack of evidence. Still, his public image collapsed. In the years that followed, he was repeatedly arrested for drug possession, weapons charges, and altercations. Once adored by millions, the former Willis became a symbol of Hollywood's fallen youth. But unlike Gary Coleman and Dana Plato, Todd Bridges' story didn't end in darkness. He chose to climb out of the abyss. Facing the threat of a long prison sentence, Todd was sent to a rehabilitation program instead of jail. It became a turning point. He committed to recovery, slowly rebuilding his life. By the early 1990s, he began a new chapter drug-free and determined never to return to his old ways. The journey wasn't easy, but Todd stayed the course and succeeded. As of today, he has lived over 30 years without touching drugs. He returned to entertainment through minor acting roles, production work, and frequent interviews to share his story. More importantly, he became a public speaker, standing in schools and churches warning about the dangers of addiction, offering hope. He co-founded SEAT, a support program to help others in recovery find their way to a healthy life. Today, in his 50s, Todd Bridges is the only main cast member from Diff'rent Strokes still alive. Looking back, he doesn't deny his mistakes. He sees them as part of what made him who he is. In interviews, Todd often says, "I'm living proof that you can hit rock bottom and still climb back up." That's why his story stands out as a rare beacon of hope in the overall tragedy of the Diff'rent Strokes cast. If Gary Coleman died in loneliness and Dana Plato collapsed in despair, then Todd Bridges is proof that the curse doesn't always get the final word. He turned his darkest chapter into a cautionary tale for others, and perhaps that's the most meaningful role the real-life Willis has ever played. Conrad Bain as Philip Drummond, the gentle father on and off screen. Amid the stories of talented children struggling in real life, the image of Philip Drummond, played by Conrad Bain, shone like a warm light. He wasn't just the anchor of the show, he was also a real-life source of emotional support for the young cast members who looked up to him. Conrad Bain was already a seasoned actor before joining Diff'rent Strokes. Born in 1923 in Canada, he had made a name for himself as Dr. Arthur Harmon on the long-running sitcom Maude. When he accepted the role of the wealthy yet kind-hearted Mr. Drummond, Conrad brought with him experience, calmness, and dignity. He transformed a role originally written as a mere guardian figure into the soul of the entire show. Each episode not only featured laughs from Arnold and Willis, but also heartfelt moments where Mr. Drummond patiently guided, comforted, and encouraged his adopted children through life's challenges. On set, Conrad acted like a true father. Todd Bridges once tearfully recalled that Bain was always kind-loving and guided us like a real dad. In a production filled with young actors, Conrad Bain was the anchor that kept things steady. This real-life kindness made it easy for audiences to believe in the Drummond family's bond. It mirrored the genuine affection behind the scenes. But the shadow of his gentle father figure only made the real-life tragedies more painful. When the lights went down, Conrad became an unwilling witness to the downward spirals of his children. He watched Dana Plato succumb to addiction and die at 34. Gary Coleman pass away young at 42, and Todd Bridges fall into legal trouble before slowly rising again. At one point, Conrad stated that the media had exaggerated the chaos and that he believed the kids would be okay. But as two of them passed away, he could no longer hide the pain. It's truly awful. I loved all those kids. After Diff'rent Strokes ended, Conrad Bain gradually retired from the spotlight, appearing in only a few small roles. He lived a quiet life devoted to his own family, rarely seeking media attention. In 2013, he passed away from complications following a stroke at the age of 89. In the hearts of viewers, Conrad Bain will forever be remembered as the gentle Mr. Drummond, the father who proved that sitcoms need more than laughter. They need a big heart to hold it all together. And because of that genuine love, the sorrow he endured watching his screen children fall into fame's dark side cuts all the deeper. Charlotte Rae as Edna Garrett, the kind and resilient housekeeper. Charlotte Rae entered Diff'rent Strokes as Edna Garrett, the housekeeper, a character originally intended to serve as a supporting link between the members of the Drummond household. But just a few episodes in, audiences began to feel the warmth, wit, and sincerity she brought to the role. In the upscale apartment of Mr. Drummond, where two black boys from Harlem had just entered a world of wealth and privilege, Mrs. Garrett became the soft bridge between cultural differences, the quiet heart that held the family together. With her signature curly hair, gentle smile, and distinctive voice, Charlotte Rae quickly turned a supporting character into one as beloved as the child stars themselves. In the early 1980s, the decision to spin her character off into the facts of life changed Charlotte Rae's career forever. From a background role in Diff'rent Strokes, she became the central figure in one of the most successful sitcoms of the decade. The Facts of Life followed Mrs. Garrett and a group of boarding school girls exploring teen issues and life lessons, and Charlotte quickly became known as America's mom throughout the 1980s. Few actors ever transform a supporting role into a cultural icon, but Charlotte did a testament to her personal warmth and undeniable talent. However, her life off-screen was filled with challenges. In 1951, she married composer John Strauss, and their marriage lasted over 2 decades. They had 2 sons, but their family life was not without hardship. After 25 years together, Strauss came out as bisexual, leading to a painful divorce. From that point on, Charlotte chose to live alone, though she maintained a respectful relationship with her ex-husband. Just as she was processing the pain of a failed marriage, she was faced with another burden. Her youngest son, Andrew, was born with autism and required lifelong special care. Charlotte admitted she often cried thinking about his future, but reminded herself to stay strong because no one else could be his foundation. That strength also showed in how Charlotte faced her own demons. During her time on Sesame Street and the early years of Diff'rent Strokes, she struggled with alcoholism. The stress of a packed schedule balancing Broadway and television work led her to rely on alcohol to sleep. But realizing how it was damaging her career and self-image, Charlotte voluntarily sought out Alcoholics Anonymous meetings. With determination, she overcame her addiction, regained clarity, and stayed strong for both her career and her family. Years later, in her 2015 memoir, The Facts of My Life, she shared this chapter with honesty, framing it as both a personal milestone and a cautionary tale for others overwhelmed by pressure. In her later years, Charlotte Rae didn't fully retreat from public life. She continued to take on occasional TV and film roles and regularly attended cast reunions. She radiated optimism, often reminding others that life is made up of countless stories, and every challenge carries its own meaning. Even after Andrew passed away from heart disease in his 40s, she held firm to the belief that love was the true legacy of a person's life. In 2017, Charlotte was diagnosed with bone cancer after years of surviving pancreatic cancer. At age 91, she chose not to pursue extensive treatment, instead meeting the illness with calm acceptance. She passed away on August 5, 2018 in Los Angeles at the age of 92. News of her death stirred memories for generations of viewers, not only of a gifted actress, but of a TV mother who delivered lasting lessons in humanity across 4 decades. In the tragic tale of the Diff'rent Strokes cast, Charlotte Rae stands as a different kind of piece. She didn't fall victim to the curse, but stood firm, weathered personal storms, and left behind a legacy that lived on both in art and in the hearts of her audience. Her portrayal of Mrs. Garrett, kind, devoted, always ready to listen lives not only in television history, but also as a reflection of who Charlotte Rae was in real life, a steadfast woman who lived fully and departed peacefully. The bittersweet legacy of Diff'rent Strokes. More than 4 decades after it ended, Diff'rent Strokes is still remembered as one of the defining sitcoms in American television. The show didn't just bring laughter, it opened new doors for discussing race and social issues on national television. That is its first and most important legacy. Diff'rent Strokes proved that television could entertain, educate, and even lead serious societal conversations in an accessible way. The second legacy lies in pop culture. The image of Little Arnold and his iconic line, "What you talking about, Willis?" became more than just a line from a sitcom, it was a phenomenon. Quoted in comedy routines, everyday life, and even listed among the most legendary lines in TV history, it cemented Arnold's place in cultural memory. Likewise, the success of The Facts of Life, a spin-off centered around Mrs. Garrett, confirmed the enduring appeal of the world Diff'rent Strokes had created, extending its cultural impact by another decade. However, no discussion of the show's legacy is complete without acknowledging the shadow behind the spotlight. Gary Coleman, Dana Plato, and even Todd Bridges became painful examples of the devastating cost of early fame. The public remembers their smiles on screen, but also the lawsuits, addictions, bankruptcy, and tragic deaths. The Diff'rent Strokes curse thus entered history as a cautionary tale. Fame can turn a child into a household name overnight, but it can also steal their childhood, their peace, and their life. And here we find the third legacy, a social lesson. The story of Diff'rent Strokes helped reshape the entertainment industry's understanding of its responsibility to protect child actors. Later debates about legal rights, income, and mental health support for young stars often cited the tragedies from this very show. Because of that, the television industry was forced to adopt stricter regulations, emphasizing the need to balance work and childhood for young performers. Finally, the show's legacy lies in the emotions it left behind. Despite the tearful stories behind the scenes, Diff'rent Strokes holds a place in viewers' hearts for the simple family values it once celebrated. The kind-hearted Mr. Drummond, the devoted Mrs. Garrett, the innocent children facing the world with laughter, all of these remain cherished memories for millions of American families. Audiences look back with both warmth and sorrow, wondering, was there ever a way to preserve those laughs without the real-life heartbreak? The legacy of Diff'rent Strokes then is a paradox, both radiant and tragic, both a nostalgic gem and a stark warning for future generations. And it's precisely this contradiction that ensures the show will never be forgotten. An icon of American television, and a mirror reflecting both the light and the shadows of Hollywood. If you found these stories truly thought-provoking, don't forget to leave a comment and share your thoughts. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an update. Every week we'll continue bringing you untold behind-the-scenes stories from Hollywood, shocking, emotional, and deeply human.